Gilbert asked. "Not too bad." He looked down at his hand, the right index finger hanging only by a tissue of flesh to the rest of his hand. "What about you?" "I'm fine, sir." "We'll get back to Kidney Ridge. That's about all we can do." The two men scrambled through the soft sand for a few hundred yards before Gilbert collapsed. "Come on, what's the matter with you, man?" "I just don't seem—" Then he put his left hand to the back of his leg and felt the sticky morass of bleeding flesh where half his calf had been shot away. "You go on, sir. I'll bring up the rear." But already the focus had changed. A tank, which had seemed to be bearing down upon them, suddenly slewed round upon its tracks, its top completely sheared away. Its engine, however, still throbbed and growled, the gears grinding like the gnashing of tortured teeth in hell, and Gilbert heard the voice of a man crying out in the agony of some God-forsaken despair, and he found himself staggering towards the tank as it lurched round yet again in a spurting spray of sand. The man in the driver's seat was alive. Thereafter Gilbert forgot himself completely, forgot his leg wound, forgot his fear. The hatch was a shattered weld of hot steel that just would not open, not yet. Almost it came, and the sweat showered down Gilbert's face as he swore and wrenched and whimpered at his task. The petrol tank ignited with a soft, almost apologetic whoosh, and Gilbert knew it was a matter only of seconds before another man was doomed to death inside a Tommy cooker. "For Christ's sake!" he yelled to the officer behind him. "Please help! I'm nearly—" He wrenched for the last time at the hatch. "Can't you fucking well see? Can't you—" His voice tailed off in desperation, and he fell to the sand overwhelmed by failure and exhaustion. "Leave it, Corporal! That's an order!" So Gilbert crawled away across the sand and wept in frenetic despair, his grimed face looking up to see through his tears the glaze in the officer's eyes, the glaze of frozen cowardice. But he remembered little else except the screaming of that burning fellow soldier. And it was only later that he thought he'd recognized the voice, for he hadn't seen the face. He was picked up soon after this by an army truck, and the next thing he could remember was lying comfortably in very white sheets in a military hospital. They didn't tell him until 2 weeks later that his brother John, tank driver with the 8th Armoured Brigade, had been killed in the second phase offensive. Then Albert Gilbert had been almost sure, but even now he wasn't quite sure. He knew one thing, though, for nothing could erase from his cerebral cortex the name of the officer who, in the battle for the ridge at Tel Akakir, had been tried in the balance of courage and been found wanting. Lieutenant Browne-Smith, that was the name, a name he'd never seen again, until recently. Wednesday, the 9th of July. "You would have walked to first otherwise," said the chairman. He looked down again at the 6 separate assessments, all of them liberally sprinkled with alphas and beta pluses, except for the one opposite Greek history, where stood a feeble-looking beta double minus delta. "Well, what do you think, gentlemen? Worth a viver, surely, isn't he?" 5 of the other 6 men raised the palms of their hands in agreement. "You don't think so?" The chairman had turned towards the 7th member of the examining panel. "No, Chairman, he's not worth it, not on this evidence." He flicked the script in front of him. "I'm sorry, if he wanted a first, he ought to have done a bit more work than this." The chairman looked very tired. "Gentlemen, we've had a long, hard day, and we're almost at the finishing post. Let's just—" "Of course he's worth a viver," said one of the others with a quiet, clinching authority. "I marked his logic paper. It's brilliant in places." "I'm sure you're right," said the chairman. "We fully take your point about the history paper, Dr. Browne-Smith, but—" "So be it, you're the chairman." "Yes, you're quite right, I am the chairman, and this man's going to get his viva." It was a nasty little exchange, and the logic examiner immediately stepped in with a peace proposal. "Perhaps, Dr. Browne-Smith, you might agree to viva him yourself." But Browne-Smith shook his aching head. "No, I'm biased against the fellow, and all this marking, it's been quite enough for me." The chairman, too, was anxious to end the meeting on a happier note. "What about asking Andrews?" Browne-Smith shrugged. "He's quite a good young man." So